folks, Brother Neuro here, and recently I've been thinking of this obsession that people have with cancel culture, and what I find interesting is that you know, all of the for all of the talking and all of the fear mongering and all of the paranoia that surrounds it, one thing that I never ever see is anybody offering any kind of productive or or practical solutions, or or ways that we can approach this to try and combat this tyranny. And I think I've come up with a way that maybe we can all sort of like we could try and get over this hurdle and this fear in a way that is in a way that unites us rather than divides us. And my solution is this: we have to have a problematic opinions amnesty day. What that is a day of the year where anybody can, through any means, express, upload a video, a blog, or whatever, any opinions or or positions or ideas or values that they happen to hold that are most likely going to get them cancelled, or at the very least in a shitload of trouble. And you can get them all off your chest on that one day, and right, once you've got them, and nobody can, and there's no fucking comebacks. It's just get it off your chest, and then we move on, right? And if we all do it at once, right? If everybody does it on the same day, or the same one, then hopefully all of the hysterical twats who want to make a big deal about it they'll just have too much going on, and they won't be able. There'll be no sort of there'll be no practical way, or there'll be no possible way they can single anyone out. And to try and set an example, in this video, I am going to, tell you, some of my ones. So here coming up for you now is possibly the most, dodgiest and questionable list that I've ever made in any of my time on YouTube. Here are 11 ways that I am still a little bit racist. Now, normally I'd wait to the end of the video to say this, but I think given the content here and given the inability for some people to see that this is not meant to in any way really be taken seriously, please give this video a like, post a comment below with your own problematic opinions, and if you too share any of the, still antiquated racist views that I'm about to fucking claim that I express, please feel free to support me on Patreon. That would be fantastic. Other than that, let's crack on with the video. Number one, when I was a kid, I much like I do now, I like to occasionally do impressions, and the first impression I ever learnt to do was one that I would never ever do now, or certainly would never, if I'd learnt to do it now, I would have said no, I'll leave that to one side. But because I grew up in the 80s, the first impression I ever learnt to do was Nelson Mandela. And I say Nelson Mandela, it wasn't really an impression as me sort of like just trying to because I didn't actually say any words. And basically, my Nelson Mandela impression as an 8-year-old boy went like this. Because that's all I ever heard when he spoke. And I'm sorry, right? Now, these days, I could do that impression, but I wouldn't claim it was Nelson Mandela. I would just claim I was the teacher from the Charlie Brown cartoons. Number two, no matter how many times I see it, I still cannot fully get my head round. No matter how many times I see it, and no matter how how brilliant and incredibly talented and exceptional they are, whenever I see a black person who is a shit hot violin player, my brain just cannot seem to deal with that. And to give you an example, just here's some footage of me watching a black guy playing a violin. Now, this one doesn't happen too often, but every now and again I do find myself using the term Eskimo. And when I do that, there's always occasionally some person who goes, excuse me, I think you'll find that the word's Inuit. I don't like the word Eskimo. And it's never an Eskimo complaining. And I know this because I've checked my Google Analytics. I've never had a single person in any Eskimo fucking area that's, I don't know what the fucking hell it's called. If I can't be bothered to learn that, I'm not going to learn where the fucking hell they live. But there's never been one single person in any Eskimo-based land or country or territory that's ever complained. And much in the same way that if you can't hear a tree fall in the woods when it making a sound, if you're not fucking there to hear it, I don't think it fucking counts or it matters if you use an offensive term, but the group that you're referring to is never fucking there in the first place. And you might say that that's wrong and ignorant, but to those people, let me ask you a question. What you're saying is, I shouldn't call this person an Eskimo because they're an Inuit. They are an Inuit. That's what you're saying. This person is an Inuit. And to you, I say, bollocks, that's a Native American in a woolly coat and you didn't even notice, so fuck you. Many, many years ago, I went to a tattoo convention, and there was a guy there called Mr. Wu who was from Thailand, and he was doing tattoos in the traditional style of which was basically a needle on a stick and basically harpooning you with like loads of little dots. And I decided to get one because the odds are I would never see or encounter somebody who was capable of doing this outside of a prison. Right? So I went through all his little booklet of all the symbols, and there was one symbol there that said, and that had some kind of, and it's got some kind of Eastern, bullshit fucking mysticism to it, and it said, whoever has this symbol will bring great joy and laughter to the world. And I thought, well, I do that already, so I might as well get this symbol. And I did. I got this symbol. It's there tattooed on my wrist. You can see the little dots, and it wasn't until several years later that someone pointed out the fact that doesn't half look like a bloody swastika, doesn't it? A really fancy one. And if there's any better example of white privilege, of you getting a swastika tattooed on your arm and you don't even notice it, then I don't know what is. Many years ago, I was having sort of an adult, interaction, over a adult chat and shall we say image and message exchange with a woman whose name I won't tell you, but I will tell you this: that she was an African American radical feminist, and after sending her after I sent her the first solicited and requested dick pic, she immediately responded by accusing me of cultural appropriation. Not so much an act of racism on my part, more of a chance for me just to flex. When I was at college, there was a guy I knew who was Jewish, and this was never a big deal or anything anyone cared about. But but vital to the story was he had very, very sort of bright, vibrant ginger hair. And even though we knew he was Jewish, we never saw him. It was never anything that we saw him engaging in terms of the actual religious activity until we first saw him wearing his yarmulke. And one of us who was on his table of friends, it might have been me. I couldn't possibly tell you. I couldn't possibly remember. But one of us, commented that with his yarmulke from the back, he looked a bit like a Jaffa cake. To which he turned around and pointed to us and said, "More like a Jaffa cake." And at that moment, his face dropped because we all looked at him, and he realised that because he had made that joke, if anyone else had said it, it would have been out of order, and we would have been incredibly we would have condemned and gone, ooh. But he had said it, which meant he gave us permission at that moment to constantly refer to him and call him that and make that his new nickname, which we did for the next 2.5 years. He never stayed in touch. One of my favourite websites to visit every now and again when I want a good giggle is a website called the Racial Slur Database, right? And before you judge me, if you haven't visited it, I suggest you do. It is basically a comprehensive list of literally every single offensive term or slur or label to every single possible variation of group, of ethnicity, race, religion, nationality, across the board. There are thousands of them, right? And the reason I think it's a great website is because there are some there that actually, there are some words and expressions there that I wonder why they never actually caught on. For example, we say African American when we refer to people who are black, but not all, but they're not always American, though, are they? In fact, in this website, it points out that people who are of British, who are from Britain, who are black, should actually be Afro-Saxon, which I think is a much better term. But my favourite one, my favourite, one of my favourite words on that website is an alternative for the term wigger. We're all familiar, if you're familiar with the term wigger, it's basically a white guy who tries really hard to, quote unquote, act black. But there's an alternative that this website gives, which is, I think, a lot better, which is we grow. Now, which, apart from just being a funny word, I think it also sounds like a nickname you would give to a black Scottish dwarf. It's a wee grow. Now, it's an unfortunate consequence, folks, that I don't have a very good memory, and one of the things I'm terrible at is remembering people's names, right? And I'm not proud of this, but whenever I meet a black person or who I've never met before and I can't remember their name, I will tend to reference them or try to, if I need to reference them or ask about them in some way, I will instead of saying their name, which I can't remember, I will try and think of the nearest or the closest, African American or black celebrity that I can think of that they look like in order to reference them. Now, this actually, whilst, again, I'm not proud of that, but it can have positive consequences. Many years ago, I was working in a restaurant and there was a guy there called Wiley, and he looked very much like the professional wrestler Kofi Kingston. So that year for Christmas, on the Secret Santa, me and my friend John, who were big wrestling fans, bought Wiley. We bought him the Kofi Kingston action figure for his Christmas present. And because he knew nothing about wrestling, he thought that me and John had actually gone out and made a fucking action figure just for him. And I hope he never sees this video, because that will really bugger up the surprise. One of my all-time favourite YouTube videos, and in fact just a great song, is the song Tanuk Tanuk Tun by De La Mendy. I hope that's assuming that's how you pronounce his name. It's a great song. In fact, it's one of those songs that's so good that if anyone tells me if you tell me that you don't like it, you dislike that song, then I can't fully trust you, because it's a fucking absolute banger. And the thing I love about it is the video is it's gone nuts, right? And if you don't know, De La Mendy basically appears in the video as 4 different characters, in 4 different colours of outfit. However, and this is genuinely true, for many, many years, for probably 5-6 years, I didn't realise that video was one guy who had been reproduced 4 times. I thought, seriously, that was 4 Indian blokes who were like an Indian boy band. I'm still, part of me wishes, thinks they still might be. Many years ago, I went to a fancy dress party and I didn't have a costume, and I ended up going to this fancy dress party dressed as a Klingon. And I say dressed as a Klingon, my Klingon costume wasn't very elaborate. The only reason I went as a Klingon is because the only thing I could find, it was in my fridge, I had a Cornish pasty, which I then gaffer taped and sellotaped to my forehead and then claimed that I was a Klingon. Right. And if you're wondering what's racist about that, and I'm like, well, think about it. If you're a Klingon, that is probably that must be really offensive. That's the equivalent of, like, if you're Asian and you see some white person pulling their eyes back, like that. And I realise there is a huge double standard in me, considering that and thinking about that and getting concerned or worried about that, whilst at the same time not giving a fuck about the feelings or concerns, of Eskimos, who actually do exist. And finally, just to show that I'm going to be across the board fair, white guys with dreadlocks. Now, I'm not going to get into all that cultural appropriation stuff. That's a discussion for other people. But all I will say is this: you show me a white guy with dreadlocks, I will show you a guy who can fucking juggle. And to be fair, making this video has done nothing but confirm that prejudice and that stereotype, because all I had to do in preparation for this video was Google the words white man with dreadlocks juggling, and this is what I got. Now you will notice that most of those images were stock photos, and you do not make a stock photo of anything unless it's something that people are going to be wanting or is commonly, is a common demand, right? So there you go. I'm right. Anyway, that's it, folks. Thank you very much for watching, and please comment below with your and feel free to take part. Feel free to make your own video in which you express your, your problematic opinions that could get you cancelled. Because if you don't, then I'm just going to be sat here, I'm going to be hung out to dry. You're not going to take part, are you? I've just fucked myself with this video, haven't I? Okay. Leave a comment below anyway, especially if you're an Eskimo. If you're an Eskimo and you're offended by that, then please, let me know below, and I will consider changing my attitude. But other than that, folks, thank you for watching. I'm Brother Neuro. Remember, where there's no sense, there's no feeling. Good night. May God be less.